All right, you BC314D jackals, give you something to cackle about. All right, the mixer unit is basically identical to the second RF. It's got 2.1s, and each one of the three coils has like a 25 picofarad across it, a red one, and the one for the AM broadcast band doesn't have a capacitor at all. And this cap was easy to get out. In other words, you cut the top wire and you move this coil, you undo these two screws, you move this away, fold it down, and you should be able to get your cutters in the back. Now this one here, I had to basically do the same thing, but I used the area that I made by moving the wires out of the way to twist the cap back and forth until the wires at the bottom broke. Metal fatigue, you would call it. And then since my new caps are smaller, I just got some new caps today, 0.1s. They just came in. You got room to get the soldering iron down in there. So it's not. This is tomorrow's job. I got the other unit. They're sitting over here, sitting back here, rebuilt. And then tomorrow I'll change the caps on this. I'm really tired. I told you I only put a little bit of time, a little bit sometime a little bit at a time, whatever. And I'm tired. I'm really tired. And this thing is really bad. But I have been watching some videos. Joey Does Tech. Well, anyway, this guy's been keeping track of how much money he makes. He repairs Xboxes and stuff. And he got one that someone had their fingers in. Oh, he buys this stuff on eBay. And that crosses your mind. Buy something on eBay, fix it, and resell it. He got that idea. I had that idea, but I know I'm not professional enough to get what I want in money out of other people. There's a bit, you got to be good at playing cards and bluffing and knowing when to keep quiet and just say to the person, well, it costs this much. Do you want me to fix it? Yes or no. I can't really negotiate with people. They always screw me over really bad. I had a whole neighborhood of people that were giving me money, what they thought they should give me back in 1940 type of thing. You know, you come out, like I told you, the one couple called me up Christmas Eve, and they didn't give me any money. They didn't even ask me if I wanted anything. You know, well, he's a good neighbor. He'll come over at Christmas Eve. He'll fix the vacuum for me because I vacuumed up the Christmas tree and clogged it, and my husband, the engineer, can't figure out how to open it up to unclog it. Yeah, that's my life. But it's my fault. I had crappy neighbors, but it's also my fault. I should say to someone, it's Christmas Eve. Well, I really want to, it's still Christmas Eve. You know, and what's in it for me? You got to look out for number one. And that's not what I do. I always tell people, yeah, you got to look out for number one. Rule number one, look out for number one. Rule number two, obey rule number one. But when it comes down to people, they use the sad face and all that, and they're going through bad times. Well, we all are. Nobody's exactly where they want to be. Some people spend too much money. Then they think someone else is going to do something cheaper to make up for the fact that they spent money on something frivolous. And that's why I always tell people, look at the car the person drives before you get involved with them. And a really bad, messed up car, the person's delirious. And a really nice car, they're cheap. They spend money on themselves, not on you. And it took me a long time to learn all these things, but I would like to see other people repair this radio. This is such a clunker. You know, it's got these big tie terminals which come up through the chassis, and then you have to put wires around this and solder them, and you have to label them as you're taking it apart so you can get this back together. It's just hilarious stuff. But it is pretty much intuitive. When you remount this, before you do, clean out each terminal. When you remount it, the wire will be right in that area. That's the one thing they did do that was pretty good. The two wires on the front, I think one's the B+. It goes between units. I labeled it as A. But we'll see if I screw up or not. But this radio is built like a tank. That's how you describe it. And The other one, if you go on the conferences, one of the other radios, I think it was the SX42, several people recapped that radio, but didn't do the 3 caps in the front end because they couldn't get to them. And the other guys shoot from the hip. They repeat this. Ready for this? You got to have a good hemostat to get at those capacitors. I have a hemostat that's a foot and a half long, maybe longer, and it doesn't you no good at all. How you get the soldering iron down there? The soldering iron is not 3 foot long. So I showed people how to take the radio apart. It's 3 or 4 screws, and that folds back, and then you get that capacitor and you put it back. That's all it is. You might have to resolder 1 or 2 wires, but that's how you get those wires. Now, if you don't, I think those were 0.01s. If you don't change those, that's where the signal is at its weakest when it comes into the radio. If those capacitors have any leakage at all, you'll get stations, but you won't get them the way you should. And why recap the rest of the radio if you don't do the most important part, the front end? Audio section, you might get distortion, you might get low volume, but you still hear something. But when you mess up the front end or don't do the front end, that's the key to the radio. Once you got to get the signal into the radio. But that guy Joey Does Tech, whatever, he got this unit from eBay, and somebody went in and they played make believe with it. And there's a I think it's for the controllers. It might be the HDMI connector, but in other words, the person went in there with a hot glue gun, and he had to undo all that and resurface it and put a new connector in there, and he shows you how to do it. And I have the heat unit, but my eyesight's not that good. My hand coordination is getting crappier. As you get older, your dexterity gets crappier. And then what's really nasty about this radio is they use that really thick wire, and they wrap it around any terminal, a turn and a half. So you heat the terminal up, and you're trying to untwist the wire, and it's not easy. And a lot of times, what I do is I just cut the wire next to the terminal, and then after I rebuild it, then I'll put this unit in a vise, and then I'll unsolder these terminals and remove the wire from it there. Some of the wires, the stranded wires that go down to it, and they're all asbestos covered, just so you know. Those come right off when you heat the terminal. You pull on them and they untwist. But there's some wires in the radio that has solid core wire. And you cut them right next to the terminal after you label the terminal. And this is about it now. The rest of the radio is self-evident. I just wanted to tell you, this unit is basically the same nonsense as RF number 2. So if you had trouble with those 2.1s like I just did, I wait till tomorrow. I'm really tired, and I had to wrestle with them. And you have to undo screws and move the coil a little bit, get some real estate in there, and after you cut the lead up on the top, you bring that capacitor down and get it in position, get yourself a pair of pliers and get on it and turn it back and forth in the space. Don't break anything, don't bend anything. And then what happens is metal fatigue, that wire will break next to the capacitor itself, and you get that capacitor out there, and then you're putting in a smaller one, which will allow you room to get your solder iron down in there. I think that's about it. I think I'm going to watch a Northern Exposure episode. I have the DVD set.